Welcome back into another edition of the Arrowhead Pride Report. It is Friday, January 19th, just a couple of days away from massive AFC divisional round matchup between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Buffalo Bills. I'm joined as always by the leader of Arrowhead Pride, Pete Sweeney. Sween, got maybe the biggest weekend of playoff football. I know people get really excited about the wild card round, but I think the divisional round is really when the playoffs start. That's really when we get to see the best teams in all of the NFL.
Yeah, I related to March Madness at this stage. And initially, I think it's really exciting those first few days when there's just nonstop games up to 64. But you really start to get the better games when you get down to the Sweet 16. And there's still like a digestible amount of games, but you know that these are among the best 16 teams in the country. Yeah, you'll get your one or two Cinderellas. That's the Tampa Bay Bucks, right? in this example here. But these are the best 8 teams or among the best 8 teams in the NFL. So typically this gives you 4 solid football games. And I consider it for sure one of the best weekends, if not the best of the year, because next week, you're down to 4, but you only get 2 games. These are 4 really, really good football games. So it should be exciting.
Yeah, I am juiced for divisional round weekend. And then we get to cap off the entire weekend with the Kansas City Chiefs and the Buffalo Bills. And we've been talking about this all week long. I don't know if this game is going to live up to the hype of their divisional round matchup a few years ago. Like, I don't know if you could replicate that insane game, just one of the absolute craziest football games that I have ever seen. And it still kind of feels like they could do that, because when we're in the playoffs, when it's Patrick Mahomes, when it's Josh Allen, when you have these two guys who are capable, more so than any other players in the NFL, of just creating explosive plays and being dynamic and just being above everyone else in terms of just like on-field play and dynamic out of the pocket playmaking and things like that. Like, it does feel like we're in for another epic game, especially with everything that's on the line in this one.
Yeah, I mean, you never can predict these types of things because you think it's going to be one thing going in, and then it turns out to be completely another. I tend to think the quality of game as far as back and forth is going to be strong, where I think it'll be different from the one game that you were referencing in the playoffs. I don't think there's a ton of points to be found in this game. The Chiefs defense is among the best in the league. We know that Josh Allen and the Bills have kind of turned it on here, but I think they're going to be able to get stops. And then when you look at the Chiefs offense, I think, you probably feel as good as you have all year about it, because I think they know what they have to do, but they're not in a scenario anymore where they're going to put themselves in precarious situations to go for it on 4th down, that type of thing. They're willing to punt the ball. And we saw the Chiefs offense last week against an injury-ridden Dolphins defense settle for field goals 4 of the 6 trips into the red zone. So, I think the Bills defense is going to be able to stop the Chiefs a bunch. And if I'm trying to make a bold prediction about this game, like in the terms of betting, I don't know if I'm choosing either team, but I really like the under. I think that this is a grinded out, maybe a more defensive football game that we've seen from these two teams in the past.
Yeah, and we'll get into the injury report. We'll highlight everything that you should be paying attention to as we wait for final injury reports today, and hopefully get some injury designations ahead of this contest. But the Chiefs are relatively healthy. Several players to watch on the Bills side. I also want to remind you guys, if you're in the comment section, drop some comments, questions, observations, anything you want us to know, and we'll try to get to them before we get out of here this morning. Yeah. But you talk about like points are going to be hard to come by in this game, and I tend to agree with you in settling for field goals in the red zone. And I think we saw Patrick Mahomes really in the last few weeks kind of take this more, okay, I don't have to be the guy that's just putting the team on my back and going out there and make plays, because we've seen that this offense right now, that's how they wind up turning the football over. And that's one thing that the Buffalo Bills defense, for all the injuries that they have right now, all the injuries they've had all season long, they've been really good at forcing turnovers all season long. And the Chiefs turned the football over in their regular season matchup. There was a couple of critical turnovers for the Chiefs that really, you can make the argument, totally cost them that game. Like, it was a totally winnable football game for the Kansas City Chiefs if it wasn't for some crucial mistakes. And I'm just, As we go into this one, as we know, the Buffalo Bills are going to try to put pressure on Patrick Mahomes and get after him, and they're going to try to force some turnovers. Like, that's the biggest thing in this game for me is like, I think the Chiefs have the edge on defense. I
Mhm.
think they can give the Bills a lot of problems offensively, but it's just a matter of, can they capitalize on some of the red zone issues, get in there, get 7 instead of 3, and can they just not turn the football over on the road in the playoffs?
Well, that's the concern, I think, if you're a Kansas City Chiefs fan, if the Bills come out and show up the defense. And what I think too is a fellow game in the AFC. We thought that Houston would play the Cleveland Browns and Cleveland would look like the defense they had all year against a rookie quarterback. And then suddenly it's the playoffs and things start to happen. And I think what you don't want if you're a Chiefs fan heading into this game is Buffalo to be able to score touchdowns in the first two drives. And then maybe, knowing the Chiefs offense, maybe you get a touchdown, maybe you stall and suddenly 14-7 and they're in control. And so we'll see. I think the key matchup here, honestly, is off the field in a way. I think it's McDermott versus Spagnuolo. I think whoever confuses the other quarterback and is able to disarm him in a sense is going to have the most success. And a bonus of that, of course, is the turnover. I feel pretty comfortable in saying this. Whoever wins the turnover battle, whether it be 2-1, 2-0, 3-2, so, is going to win the game. I mean, I think these teams are that close. Their flaws are kind of on par with each other. Still two teams capable of winning the Super Bowl because I think the rest of the field is not as great as it's been in previous seasons. But I think it's close. I think it's close. And so those little things are going to be even more magnified than maybe they have been in previous matchups.
And you mentioned Steve Spagnuolo, and I totally agree with you. I think Bill's head coach Sean McDermott is a great defensive mind head coach, and I think that he deserves a lot of the credit for their defensive turnaround because mid-season that
Yeah.
defense was dealing with a lot of injuries, and they were kind of falling apart. And they've really settled down and become kind of the defensive unit that I think everybody expected in Buffalo over the back half of the season, but we talk about Chiefs turnovers, and we should really also mention Bills turnovers
Yeah.
because Josh Allen has turned the football over a ton this season, and we've
Mhm.
seen them over the back half of the season really lean into their running game, lean into their dynamic running back in James Cook, and I think some of that was to try to mitigate their turnover issues,
Yeah.
but in this game, in the profile of this entire contest, and like the narrative around it, that's going to be like this legacy defining game in a lot of ways for Josh Allen, because Patrick Mahomes' legacy is already defined.
Yeah.
He can only just increase it through with another win here. It's going to be really important for what Steve Spagnuolo brings to the table on Sunday. And I think we already got a glimpse of it against the Miami Dolphins. Like, we were talking about it for weeks. This defense was getting off to really slow starts for the last like 6 games or so. And you're kind of like, man, is that something like our offense is starting to figure them out? Or is this hey, we're just trying to run what we run right now because we're going to have some things in our bag for the postseason? And it kind of felt like we got a glimpse of that against the Dolphins. I'm hoping we get that this weekend from Steve Spagnuolo, because I think it is critical for this Chiefs defense, where there's one thing that you can point to that they have not been elite at this season, and that's forcing turnovers. They've been elite virtually everywhere else for most
Right.
of the season on the defensive side of the ball. They just haven't forced a lot of turnovers. And if they can do that, that can be the difference in Sunday's matchup.
It's the one stat that's really hard to predict, but I think when you bring it up, it is important because as great as Josh Allen can be, he can be that amount of bad, right? Like there's a high variance, very, very high variance of like for Al. Like I think Patrick Mahomes, when he plays, generally speaking, he's either going to be okay or a beast. Josh Allen can go from one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the league to one of the top or one of the bottom 5 worst quarterbacks in the league. And what exasperates that point, if you've seen in games, is when you can get an early turnover, when you get him to make a mistake, take a chance that he shouldn't, and you punish him for it, because he can be susceptible into, you can kind of see it as these nightmare Bills games go on, where he kind of unravels a little bit. I don't know how much of an unraveling there is for Patrick Mahomes. I know the critics, if there's any Bengals fans watching, will quickly point to that one single game of where, there was a complete unraveling in the second half and then in overtime. well, okay, one game in a 6-year career. I think generally speaking, you can at least get an okay outing from Patrick Mahomes. Allen, um, like I said, he can tailspin a bit, and so I think it becomes even more important for the Chiefs defense to find a way. Mike Edwards has been a blessing, right? Like if you can't make turnovers by your homegrown talent, you buy them, and it's paid off for the Chiefs with Edwards and being able to have turnovers here. I think they're slowly but surely getting better at it, but someone's got to have to find a way to get the ball on the ground or certainly pick Josh Allen off.
Yeah, it's very rare that you sign two kind of low-level veteran players like Mike Edwards and Drew Tranquill, and they have the
Yeah.
kind of impact that they've had for the Kansas City Chiefs this season. They've been tremendous
Well,
offseason signings. Charles Omenihu has been a tremendous offseason signing. The
that was a
defensive
point.
free agents were great, at least.
Yeah, that was a point, and I don't, it was talked about yesterday. I know that friend of the site, Vahe Gregorian of the Kansas City Star, has kind of been asking those questions. I'm sure he's doing a great column for this weekend's game on it, just about those free agents that they brought in. And Steve Spagnuolo pointed out that it's very rare for you to have such success in the free agency market and to do so at every single level. So you mentioned Omenihu, you mentioned Drew Tranquill, and then certainly Mike Edwards. We just spoke about, to have that impact in the free agency market is extremely rare. And I think what is less talked about this is, let's not forget here, and this has been a problem. The Chiefs have been, very much up against the cap, and so when offensive moves have popped up, where are they going to trade for a receiver? Should they have signed a receiver? That type of thing. Yeah, I think that would have helped, but like every plus addition that you add to a team also means that like you have to take something away. So maybe maybe you do get DeAndre Hopkins, right? And maybe the offense is taking a little better. Does that suddenly mean you don't have Charles Omenihu, Drew Tranquill, and
Yeah.
Mike Edwards? I don't think anyone, when they're complaining about the offense, really thinks about like, no, there's still a limit of the amount of money you can spend, and there's a trade-off there. And so I think that's important. An important part of that storyline to remember too is like they built up the defense like very intentionally. Probably expected better things. I think they wouldn't lie about this, from a Donovan Smith, and certainly they probably have hoped that the Jawan Taylor signing worked out a little bit better, to start here. I think that story's still being written, but you sign a wide receiver, that could mean 3 defensive pieces that have been the key to your success here, may not be here.
Yeah, I was talking to Rocky Magana, our wonderful contributor at
A lot of
arrowheadpride.com,
personality. I'm a big
and
personality guy at Iraq.
my co-host on the Arrowhead Pride Rapid Reaction Show, and he straight up said this is the best defense I've ever seen for the Kansas City Chiefs, and I don't disagree with him. Like, I can't remember, they've had good defenses over the years. Don't get me wrong. Like, they've had some really good defenses that have helped them win a lot of football games. But this
Yeah.
is the first time that I was ever like, yeah, but you could really make the case that they're the best defense in the NFL. And I know the Ravens were great and the Browns were great this season. And there's a lot of good defenses across the league. But somehow the Chiefs defense has still been an underrated part of their team this season. And I
Right.
guess it's because of Patrick Mahomes and the offense and Andy Reid and Travis Kelce and all of that. But the defense is the reason that they're going to win a championship this year. If they could get past Buffalo and they could somehow make it to a Super Bowl, it's going to be because of that side of the ball. And
Well,
I
and
don't think it's really that close.
yeah, and I think about this too, and I've mentioned it in the past, of just like where in history you can point to where you can win a Super Bowl defense first. And I had mentioned the 2000 Ravens, '02 Bucks, '03 Pats, '08 Steelers, '15 Broncos. If you look at the points per game and trying to define, okay, what was their offense like? It was all 16 or lower. I think on a scoring from a scoring perspective, the Chiefs are the middle of the pack. They're actually better suited than all of those championship teams were, with the elite defense. And I actually think they finished 15th for the whole year, but they played a lot better toward the end of the season. And so you're probably looking around 10. So there's a history too that you could point to where it's like, okay, maybe this isn't the Chiefs that are scoring 30, 35 points a game, but maybe 21, 24 can be enough. I think that's what's hidden in this game. I mentioned the under before. Like, it'd be a little surprising, but I wouldn't be completely flabbergasted, stunned if somehow, what are recent history would tell you these big time offenses, the Chiefs and the Bills, where you end up with a 17-14 score. I feel, you think about the cold weather, you think about snowy Buffalo, you think about how that crowd's going to be rocking. I don't think that's out of the cards. What was the last game? 20-17. So 17-14 would not be out of the realm of possibility. And that's what's funny about this. Like, I think there are fans who are still not thrilled with how the offense looks. You might not be thrilled with how the offense looks all the way to a Super Bowl championship, right? Like, that's the fortunate, I guess, reality. Like, the offense may not look good this entire time. Doesn't mean the Chiefs can't win.
I mean, at this point, if you haven't accepted what the Chiefs offense is, I don't know what we're doing
Look,
here.
Steve, we know you accepted it a long time. We get it. You were early adopter of the Chiefs offense stinks. I'm trying to put the glass half full spin on this a little bit, where it just has to be okay. I mean, that's what I'm saying here. If you have an elite defense, it just has to be okay.
Yeah, it's exactly everything that we've been talking about. It's Rice, it's Pacheco, it's Kelsey, and just a little sprinkle on top of everybody else. And that's it. Justin Watson doesn't need 8 targets in a game. Justin Watson needs like 3 targets. And that's the perfect recipe for the Chiefs to find success on offense. I want to get to a couple of comments before we kind of turn the page to the injury report and everything. And this first one's from Tony. Hey, Pete, it's Tony from Montreal. You're my favorite covering the Chiefs. Just giving you a compliment, Sween. Just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah. So we did a draft the other day on CDOT show on 610 Sports Radio, the drive of the worst sports cities to possibly live in. My man Tony sent me an email. Didn't like Ottawa being on there. He's from Chiefs fan in Canada. Always buys all the merch. Wanted to make sure that we all knew that Ottawa is the capital of Canada and it is a fine place to live. So, Steve, maybe an off-season trip for me and you to Ottawa and Ontario.
I've never been there, but I would love to go, and I will definitely keep that in mind.
Yeah.
From Charlie, I think Andy Reid has been holding some things back for the playoffs, and we'll see some wrinkles to manufacture points this week. Yeah, I think there's always some truth to that. And for all of these NFL head coaches, like, they'll never admit it, and they get asked about it all the time, and they're just like, no, we just game plan, and this is what we install for this particular matchup after we watch film and try to find things that we can work to our advantage and whatever. But we know there is some truth to that, whether they will admit it or not. And I think that's one of the biggest things here. What Charlie brings up is like what Andy Reid has dialed up for the red zone packages to try to find some success this week. And I'm just curious to see how the Bills try to attack the Chiefs offense. Like, I still don't believe that we're really at a point where they're going to say Rashee Rice is the number one option, so we're going to draw all of our attention to him and leave Travis Kelce open. I still think opposing defenses are saying we got to shut down Travis Kelce and try to make everybody else beat us. So I'm curious to see how the Chiefs attack that this weekend, and if there is some wrinkles to try to help them get over the hump and actually get into the end zone instead of settling for field goals.
I think the answer to that is yes and no. And I think sometimes you see something that you haven't seen all year in the postseason. Maybe that's much more of the opposing defense. Like, you'd only use it against the Bills defense because they're weak in certain areas. That's what I think is hidden in what makes Andy Reid so good. I mean, he spotlights, where do you guys suck as far as defensively? And I'm going to attack that. And, maybe a play that you would see here wouldn't have worked against any other team that had that particular deficiency. And so then your mind tells you, well, oh, they were saving this for the play. Might have just been saving it for the Bills. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so then it kind of gets lost in that. But you're right. I mean, I think there are certain things that you save for certain moments. We've seen it in the Super Bowl with Eric Bieniemy's play, right? Where they switched. I forget what that was called, Rose Bowl, and Wasp. Legendary play at this point. But yeah, I don't disagree. But I think sometimes we just think, hey, they're saving it up, when it's more for saving it for the opponent.
Yeah, I think it's a lot more too about the ebbs and flows of the season. Like, they're going to dive into the film and they're going to try to find like recent tendencies of this Bills defense. It doesn't mean that they're not going way back to try to find some other things, because the philosophies don't change, but there are different tendencies that teams can build up over the course of a season, and then you try to find ways to exploit that.
They'll surprise you though. Sometimes, like, they'll just whip something out And they're like, "Yo, we've been working on this for 10 weeks." And it's like, "Well, where do you find it?" "Oh, well, Matt Nagy was looking at Harvard, Yale film from the
Yeah.
1920s, and there were 4 running backs on it." It's like, "What are you guys what? How do you have time to do this?" I don't have time for that. A lot
Yeah.
of time spent in that building. Yeah.
Yeah, I just assume that during the offseason, Andy Reid is doing nothing but watching like black and white football games from the 1940s to find
Well, where
weird
was it? Where at what
stuff.
it wasn't during the year when we came up with like remember that Brett Veach kind of said the thing about the pat plays? So Andy Reid just like writes plays on index cards all year, and by the time he gets to training camp, it's like I'm glad
Yeah.
that we're visual right now. If you're listening to this, I'm holding my hands up like very thick pile of index cards, and he saves those and then installs them in training camp and breaks them out in the postseason, Steve.
Yeah. So hopefully we see some cool things from Andy Reid. I'm sure we'll see some good things on Sunday evening. But turning to the injury report, only Chief that did not practice on Thursday is defensive tackle Derek Nottie, who's still dealing with the tricep injury he suffered last week. So that's something to monitor. Wanye Morris was a limited participant in practice after being a full participant on Wednesday, trying to work his way back from that concussion protocol. Kadarius Toney was limited again. Justin Ross was limited, and L'Jarius Sneed was limited. Sky Moore also limited as he tries to make his way back from injured reserve. But I think the only players that I'm really questionable on are Ross, Toney, Morris, and Noddy. Everybody else I expect to go and be healthy, though. I don't know if the Chiefs are going to activate Sky Moore this week.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me like you're as full strength as you could possibly be. Nadi is, a decent sized loss, but not to the point where it's going to impact the result of the game. I think, and this is just how I feel. I think even if Wanye Morris was completely healthy, I think it'd be Donovan Smith playing. And, what are you looking at from the other guys, Tony and Ross? You know, 5 to 10 plays. So if one of them can go, that's good. I don't think you're necessarily making an extreme game plan around these guys. I think they'll have designed plays potentially for them. Ross more so in the red zone, and Tony more so looks where this wide receiver doesn't have to catch the ball, like maybe in the backfield where they, swing Tony around into like one of those returner looks. I think that's what you're looking at in these guys, but the Chiefs are way more healthy than the Bills are entering this game.
Yeah, at this point, I think Kadarius Toney, if he is going to be active and be on the field, I kind of want him to just be the returner. I don't really want him involved in the offense as a pass catcher. And I think we saw last week that they trust McCole Hardman. They're going to give McCole Hardman some opportunities, even if it can be frustrating at times. Like, I think those deep shots that they took last week to McCole Hardman, I think there's something to read into that. And I think we're going to see a couple more of those this week. And hopefully the Chiefs just find a way to connect on one of those finally, because it feels like they haven't connected on one all season.
I'm going to bring up something very unpopular here. Very, very unpopular. But is Marquez Valdez-Scantling better suited for those deep shots? Like, at least he's getting his hands on the ball. McCole Hardman is nowhere in the vicinity of the ball. You know what I mean? And the Marquez, great AFC title game last year. Marquez Valdez-Scantling had a great third down catch last week. He caught the ball. And all I'm saying is they're about the same speed. Marquez is a bigger target. I understand everyone likes McCole because he's new again and went to the Jets. He's a new man. He's the same guy. And at least with Marquez, he's touching the football on these deep shots. I think they're on the verge of hitting one of these. I just wonder who it's going to be. Rasheed, a couple weeks ago had one when that was more of a lapse in coverage that he kind of adjusted on the fly. This Rasheed development, we talk about it a lot, but had they not miraculously hit in the second round on this particular wide receiver, we wouldn't maybe be here. So it's just a huge part of what the Chiefs do. But I just wonder about that. I mean, I know it's like I said, I know that's going to be a highly unpopular take, but I wonder if Marquez is better suited for a deep chance than, because once in a while he does catch it and he has a 70-yard touchdown. How many of those does McCole have? McCole is more so to me, you get it to him fast and he makes his own way.
I just feel like last week, I think that he had 3 deep looks, or at least 2 of them. And he was right there on both of them. Like he had it. Patrick Mahomes put it in the perfect spot. One of them he got held on, but like
One of them,
gave up. He just gave up on the route as he
if
was
I'm
getting
thinking of the
held.
right player, one of them he should have dived or dove, right?
Yes.
Like he should have,
Can we lay
and he
out
didn't.
McCole,
He didn't.
please? Like,
Yeah. So I mean, I think Marquez would dive. I think he would.
it's
I'm trying to give
yeah,
him the
but he
benefit of the doubt. I mean,
probably
look,
wouldn't catch it. So.
Marquez has at most 3 Chiefs games left, so you might as well, get as much out of him as you can.
Moving over to the Buffalo Bills side, because I want to talk about the Chiefs deep passing game.
Marquez Valdez-Scantling versus McCole Hardman is like a conversation you like wish you just didn't have to have.
Yeah,
there's no good answer to that. It's
looking
like
forward to turning that page this offseason.
Should we have this old tuna fish or just go hungry tonight?
For the Buffalo Bills, several key players to watch on their injury report as we get official designations on Friday afternoon ahead of the game. Wide receiver Gabe Davis seems legitimately in doubt for this game. He did not play in the wild card round, has not practiced all week this week. Stephon Diggs didn't practice on Thursday, but that's just more of a rest thing. I don't think he's in danger of missing this contest by any means. Linebacker Terrell Bernard could be in serious jeopardy. He has not practiced all week with an ankle injury. I believe he was carted off the field last week, so that's something to watch.
They're saying 2 weeks on Bernard, so I don't think he's playing in this one.
Yeah, so it sounds like he's not going to be available. That's a big loss for the Buffalo Bills when we talk about like attacking the middle of the field. So that's something to watch. Cornerback Christian Benford did not practice all week with a knee injury. Seems like he's probably not going to be able to go. Same with safety Taylor Rapp. And then Rasul Douglas was limited again, but he's already said he's playing, so expect him to be up. And then cornerback Taron Johnson is in the concussion protocol. He's been limited all week, still has yet to officially clear, so that's something to keep an eye on. Then punter Sam Martin did return to practice in a limited capacity on Thursday. He's dealing with a hamstring injury. They signed another punter off the street this week. So that's another thing to watch. The Bills, lots of injuries on that side of the ball. So lots of things to keep an eye on Friday, as well as ahead of the game on Sunday once we get the official game inactives.
Yeah. I think the bottom line is the Chiefs are a little bit healthier, which is a good thing. When you're traveling on the road, I think the margin is small, and it will be the rest of the way. Even if you were to miraculously get the Texans in your building next week, I think they're quietly a good football team as well. You got to play clean ball if you want to lift the Lombardi, and I think having a full team or as full as possible. I mean, I know that there are players lost like Brian Cook, but as healthy as you could possibly be right now is a very good thing for their chances.
Yeah, I think you can beat the Buffalo Bills over the middle of the field, especially with their secondary injuries, with their linebacker injuries. And I think that's where the Chiefs are going to attack them on Sunday evening. So definitely a lot of question marks on the injury report to keep an eye on, but we'll have everything you need to know at arrowheadpride.com. So make sure you stay locked in there. As always, please make sure you subscribe, rate, and review everything that we're doing right here on the Arrowhead Pride Podcast Network. You can follow Pete on Twitter at PG Sweeney. I'm Steven Sertz, where you can find me. We'll have a fresh edition of Kingdom Keys coming out tomorrow afternoon ahead of the first divisional round playoff games on Saturday afternoon. We got a fresh episode of Show and BK up for you right now on the Arrowhead Pride Podcast Network, so I encourage you to go check that out. We will have everything you need to know ahead of this massive matchup between the Chiefs and the Bills on Sunday evening. We'll talk to you guys then.